Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Mission Daily. I'm your host, Albert Chow. Actually, I'm not just the host. I have a co-host, too. My buddy, the boss lady, Stephanie Postles.
Hello. I am the host. You're the host, too. So.
Well, listen, I wanted to say welcome back because you have returned. Our last episode's pretty popular, over 200,000 downloads of people wanting to learn what Burning Man is. You taught me what Burning Man is. But let me tell you something. I saw something on the news about how it got monsoon rain and it was, well, the news said, catastrophic on the way out. I don't think anyone died, but it did look miserable. I can say that for sure. That people had to trudge their way out of Burning Man. And I'm not going to lie, Stephanie, if you listen to our last episode, I said I was not enthusiastic about being there. And then I saw that. I'm like, well, I'm definitely not enthusiastic about being there. So now my major question is, with all that rain and all that trouble leaving, would you go back?
Yeah, I actually say
then fill us in. What happened? Because you know me, like I hate bad logistics. Like if I'd be like, yo, I will never come back.
Never again. I will say this year was like 100 times better than last year, even with all the chaos.
Come on now.
Even with all the rain. I mean, the one thing to remember was, when we got to Burning Man, we came in on a Monday. And so we had the whole entire week to be there without the rain, without the mud. So all of that came on the very tail end.
So you had a week long, you got to experience like 90+% of what you were supposed to experience. And then if you listen to our last episode, Stephanie also admitted that last time, she did not stick around for the official Burning Man. She left a little bit early so that she could leave.
Yeah, which this time, same thing. I still left before the actual Burning Man event. But yeah, so we had a long time to be able to experience everything. And I'll say the second year was so much better because I knew a lay of the land. And whereas year one is a little more overwhelming because if you open up your little booklet and you're like, it's 9 a.m., what's going on? There's like 500 things going on. There's classes and food and like all these like art things and DJs, like there's so much going on. And I think last year I was just kind of going with the flow and following, where this year, because I understood the layout of everything, where things were, it just was a lot easier. So obviously, when you have hindsight and you're like comparing the two, I'm like, year two was way easier because I understood it. And our camp was bougier than ever. I consider our camp last year like a homeless shelter when I look back on it.
How much was a ticket to your camp?
$400 to get in.
For the week?
Yes, for the week. A lot. Some people paid more. So it's definitely like, I know people paid a couple $1,000s to be in it. It just depends on what you can give. But yeah, for the week, that means we had this whole camp set up. There was these huge domes where these workshops were going on all day, but it also gave our camp members a place to hang out together. Every night we had these two chefs. One owns a restaurant in Switzerland, one owns a restaurant in Tulum, and they would make us these 5-course meals every night, which, like you remember last year, that is not anything that we had access to. It was kind of like every man for himself, and like go find the food on the playa, go make your own food, but we did not have 5-course meals each night. And it was just like a really nice camp. So for $400, yes, we were able to get into our camp, and it was epic. Had a beautiful time, had an amazing time. It was a great reconnection point for me and my partner, Jeremy. Like,
okay, so
going
reconnection on what? Like, you mean like
on
a relationship level?
On a relationship,
like, give
yes.
us an idea what's going on.
All the
there.
above, but mainly for a relationship level. Because when you're out there, you just get to focus. You get to focus on your friend. You get to focus on your partner. Pure focus. No phones, no kids, no work, no nothing. Like the whole goal of every day is just to have fun. And so I don't think there's many times in life that we get that chance just to have multiple days in a row to just focus on your loved one, to focus on your friends, and to just not have any distractions. And when you have such a big difference between, 4 kids around and business and phone and like all these distractions to then like nothing other than just let's just be present and have a good time out here, you can, I think for me, it's like a relationship reset, because it can go from, it's pretty easy to become like ships in the night when there's a lot of stuff going on, to have many days where you're not connecting, talking, dropping in. And that can go on for a long time. And so I feel like this kind of experience is a really nice one for us to be able to reset. And it's like, you're just kids again, having fun and playing in the desert with no obligations other than just like have fun. So it was a beautiful time. A lot of things I saw, a lot of new experiences, a lot of edges that were, you wander into different spots where you're like, whoa, okay, I didn't mean to wander into here. What is this? So there's a lot of interesting things that I stumbled into. and it was like such a beautiful time. Now, the mud was freaking intense. However, what was funny about it was at the very end of the trip on Friday, I didn't realize that our camp had Starlink, which you can, connect to. I didn't even realize. I wasn't looking for it because I'm like, I don't want my phone. And I heard a couple people had it, but I didn't even go seeking for it. But then when we found out on Friday that we probably would not be able to get out of Burning Man because of the rain, Friday or Saturday, I forget when it was, I was like, okay, I need to check in with my kids because I told them I was going to be home on Saturday.
Yeah. Let's catch people up on that before you dive into this. So Burning Man is in the desert, and so I think we all know that there is no water there. But was it a record? It was like a record rainfall.
In 100 years.
Certainly a record in the last 100 years. So 100-year rainfall falls. There is not a lot of infrastructure. So people that are listening to this, try to picture this. There's not really infrastructure going into Burning Man. Like the roads end at a certain point, and then from there, you're talking about just driving over compact sand. Well, compact sand absorbs water. It turns into mush, turns into mud. And a lot of these vehicles that I saw on the news, of course, these are the ones featured most on the news, are like RVs. But RVs aren't actually four-wheel drive vehicles. They're meant to be driven on the road or something that is hard and flat. And so you're talking about huge RVs, campers, lots of vehicles could not traverse the wet, muddy sand. Like they couldn't drive through it at all. Yeah. For anyone who's ever been to the beach where you can drive on the sand, this is actually quite common for even just dry sand in the Outer Banks. People get stuck all the time. Their vehicles, they think their vehicles are super vehicles, but as you know, most SUVs are not made for off-road. They're made for, the driveway, looking big and tough on the driveway. So that's what happened is when the water started falling and all the rain started falling, basically a lot of vehicles couldn't move. They couldn't get off. And so this is where the journey really gets interesting. Steph, you guys hear this rain is coming. So that means you recognized like this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I don't even know if I heard the rain was coming because we were so disconnected from the outside world that I didn't even really know until I think it started. And I was like,
well,
oh,
it rained
this is so
a little
nice.
Bit beforehand, right? Like beforehand, it had already gotten some unseasonably amounts of water.
But it got absorbed.
There was water pooling and stuff before, but it was still passable.
It was still passable. And I remember they were like, oh, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. I was like, yes, it rained some. That's awesome. It hasn't rained in a long time. And it didn't really delay anything, though. So I knew it had rained before. So I think I just didn't understand what it means to get rain in a desert like this. Because when it started raining, it was just pouring and pouring. And with that, the rain doesn't even get absorbed into the sand. It literally just turned into this like quicksand mud that I've never experienced before because I've been in mud and I've been in sandy sand before. And it was like, I don't even know what this was, but it really didn't absorb it. And it just kept turning into more and more mud where when you'd be walking through it, I would literally like my whole foot would sink in up to my ankle and I would have to like pull my leg out to get to the next spot.
There's like suction.
Yeah, suction. Like you're sucked into it. And I mean, it was just, it was definitely more intense mud than I've ever been in. And it just didn't stop raining. And so I was like, oh man, this seems like not good. And, I'm in a tent, like I'm in a glamping tent. And so I'm like, we're not really elevated at all. Like, will this tent be able to withstand water, like sitting in water and for how long? And so there was definitely a lot of questions. And what I did know, though, that it was nice being in a camp because you have this group of people that, many of my friends had RVs. So I'm like, okay, if my tent starts to flood, I'll get into their RV with them. There's a lot of like people that you can rely on out there to be able to help support you. So I really wasn't that worried other than I wanted to get home to my kids. Yeah. And I promised them I was going to be home on Saturday and I'm a woman of my word and I have high integrity around that. And I at least wanted to figure out like how I could. When we couldn't, that's when I, found someone's Starlink and hopped on that and FaceTimed them and just said, hey, I'm not going to be able to come home. Hopefully tomorrow. But it was very open-ended because I really didn't know when we'd be able to get out because we actually flew into Burning Man on a plane, which is, I know some people will be like, that's so bougie. That's not what Burning Man is. Whatever. That's what we did. We flew in on a plane. And I knew looking at this.
Where did it land?
On the desert floor, like on the sand. There's no runway.
That's a lot of confidence to know that it can support the plane.
Yeah. So we flew in on our friend's plane into Reno, got to Reno, and he chartered a propeller plane from Reno into Black Rock City.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was
like not like a jet.
Like a private jet? Like that doesn't seem possible.
No. That's why we had to stop in Reno first. So yeah, it just lands on the sand. And I was just looking out there and I'm like, there's no way like any of these little planes will be able to land, I don't know, in a week. Like I just don't even know how they would because it's so muddy and the whole plane would probably just get stuck in the mud. So we started thinking about what to do and we just kind of hung out one night. And what was interesting though is once I got access to my phone, of course it's so easy to get sucked back into it. I look and I see what the media is saying about Burning Man, and I know we always say this. We have a media company and we always look around and just, media, it's so clickbaity. They're obviously going to always say the worst thing. Burning Man has never even made any like really real media coverage. And for the first time, people are learning about Burning Man. And what they're seeing is, oh my gosh, everyone has to hunker down at Burning Man right now. They're told to stay there. There's cannibalism going on. There's Ebola spreading. There's scarcity of like resources. Everyone's running out of water. And I was like looking at these articles. And then I would step out onto like the area where all the camps are and I'd look around and I'm like, people are having their best time ever in the mud. The DJs are playing, all the camps are like giving
It's like
food
Woodstock.
away. Yeah, like who needs
the second
water?
Woodstock? Oh yeah, you were like a child, but
Yeah, I was like, I don't know.
so
what
Woodstock, they did Woodstock again.
Mm-hmm.
So Woodstock was it was redone in the 90s. I want to say the late 90s, and similar thing happened. Infrastructure wasn't ready. Torrential rain turned into like a mud fest. Like there's anyone can look up videos and footage of it. It's like people are just covered in mud head to toe, but also doing what you just suggested, which was having the best time with what they have. Like they were like, well, we can't stop the mud, so let's enjoy it. Similar to you can't stop the rain. What are we gonna do?
I know. And everyone was so like, you'd go to these camps and they'd be like, is your camp okay? Do you guys have enough water? Do you need food? And like everyone just giving. And like there was no scarcity. There was no like aggression or anything. Everyone actually leaned in more to have the best time ever. People were out making mud sculptures. There was a really funny one of like a middle finger. I'll have to send it to you. It was hilarious. But like looked like a perfect middle finger in the middle of this like made up of mud. But it's just interesting because I've never been on the ground floor of something while the media is saying one thing and you're like, that's actually not true at all. Like it's not even like 10% true. And I was, walking around quite a bit to kind of see what was happening around these different camps. And anyways, all that to say, the next day we woke up and we heard more rain was coming. And I mean, we had an awesome, party in our camp. We were really celebrating the rain. We had a great dinner. And our camp had brought a lot of extra food, so no one was really worried that we were going to run out of anything. And actually, we were just giving things out to other camps who maybe didn't have as much. And so when I heard more rain was coming, that's when I was like, I got to get home to my kids. But you could not drive out. The mud was, so intense that we saw cars and trucks who were trying to drive out, and they would just get instantly stuck. And so I was like, okay, definitely can't drive out, even though some parts were looking better.
This is where sometimes maybe being the first mover isn't helpful because you this is second mover advantage. You're like, wait a second, hold on.
Yeah, I know.
Vehicle ain't gonna be our way.
Yeah, like what I saw was like, you don't want to panic and you don't want to try and get out of there because, that might make it worse. And so a couple people in our crew, the ones of us who all had kids and were trying to get home, we opened up our map and we were like, what's it look like to walk out of here? And we looked at the map. And
all right, let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back because last time we did this, you said it was like, for example, a bike ride of almost 10 minutes to, get to like the outer rings.
Yeah,
the
playa, other side.
Where if there was music, you would have to go to the outer rings. 10-minute bike ride. Let's say you're, so it's like a few miles out. That's the outer playa. How far away on foot did you calculate before, like, let's say you were on a main road where a normal vehicle could come pick you up?
Yeah, well, what was funny is we couldn't really tell because on our map we were looking and it wouldn't, we didn't have good internet or anything, so it wasn't calculating how far away it was. But we did see on the map like this looks like where the road is, and so he hit a pin.
Your brother-in-law said he would have had a paper map.
He would have had
compass.
Yeah.
He would have calculated. He's like,
I know.
Hey.
Yeah, he really would have. He would have been like, easy. This is all we got to do.
This is all we got to do.
We looked, and our one friend who was, kind of leading this, he was like, I think it's anywhere between 6 miles and 12 miles to walk out.
That's a big range.
It's a big range. And so.
Plus, it's not just walking. I think people let's revisit. The ground is saturated with water, with grippy, suction-y sand mud. So you're like top speed walking was probably like 1.5 miles an hour.
Yeah, it was pretty, it wasn't the fastest. especially when you're in the camp area where everyone's been walking around. That's like was the worst area where people were just
Makes
making
sense.
more and more mud. Once you got farther away, it got a little bit better, but the main camp area, we were so slow trying to get through that mud. But so yeah, we just started walking. We put our stuff in our friend's RV, all of our big suitcases. We brought what we needed, like the water, duffel bag, things like that, because we were like, well, we need snacks in case it ends up being 12 miles. That might be intense. And we just started walking. And I would say when we're about probably 4 miles in, maybe, we look out and it's just all desert all around you. And we see this person crazily flying through the mud in this van. And you would see him coming up to a mud pile, and then you'd see him speed up through it. Like, he wasn't slowing down. He would speed up, like, fly over top of these mud piles. And this guy comes up, and he's like, yo, dudes, you guys need a ride? Where are you going? And he was apparently picking up people who were walking and taking them to the fence line. And so this guy had a roof rack. He didn't have any room in his van because he had all his, like, Burning Man DJ stuff, all this stuff. He had a roof rack, though. And so we got on top of this guy's van, and he drives us to the fence line. Drives us in a way where I was like, we might actually flip over and die because this dude's crazy. Like, most times, you see something.
I'm picturing you're laying flat on your belly? Like, how are you doing this?
So there's this, we're sitting, there's this roof rack that we're like holding onto underneath of it. I'll have to send a video of like showing you how it worked. Cause he had, a spot you could sit on the roof, but you were able to hold on to something in the middle. So it kind of like, you weren't just holding on to like a flat van top. Like there was something we were holding on to.
So you were sitting on your butt, standing on your feet? Like
No, sitting on your butt and holding on to this roof rack type of thing.
So he had some type of roof.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't to
transport kind of deal.
I mean, it's not for people for sure. Like it was not for people. It's for probably like carrying like a sofa up there, not like a person.
Okay, but you chose to sit on it.
Oh yeah. We chose to get up there because there was no room inside of his van. And I was like, I don't want to get in his van and get like murdered. I don't know what's in there.
Laying down was probably be a better. I mean, I guess you couldn't.
Well, there's too many people. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we all had to kind of like squish out there like sardines, and I think one person even like held onto the back. But it was hilarious because I'm such a pretty safe, conservative person, and I normally would not do that. But I was like, I'm not walking another 6 miles if if this is the option. But it was
You're
funny
in survival mode. You're like you turned into a wild animal. Like you're trying to get out of here.
We were even planning like, okay, if this guy's van flips, I'm going to have to catapult myself out. Like I got to be ready with my legs to catapult myself away from his van so I don't get rolled on top of. Like that's the level of thinking that our group was doing because his driving was just so funny. Like you would literally see like, I think that's a river. I think that's a big muddy river. And then instead of slowing down, he'd be like zoom and like zoom up over top of it. Like it felt like he was just floating over things. So anyways, he takes us to the fence line. Thank God we made it. We're alive. And then we're like, well, now we have to keep walking down this road to try and get somewhere where an Uber will pick us up because essentially the Coast Guard or someone, they blocked off entrance and exit into Burning Man. So no one was allowed to leave. No one was allowed to come in. You could leave if you walked out, but no one was allowed to like drive out because they didn't want a bunch of more people getting stuck. And so no Uber could come and get us where we were on this road. So then we were like, okay, I think we have another 3 miles to walk down this road to get to our spot to be picked up by an Uber. And we are walking about 1.5 miles down the road, and then some random truck, don't know where he came from. I don't know if he like got out of the desert somehow or what. He stops. He's like, do you guys need a ride? And so we hop in the back of this guy's truck, and he takes us, a few miles down the road to get to our Uber. So that's how we got out. We walked and we hitchhiked out, and we made it. And
then once you got over the fence line, how'd you get from there to your final destination, your home?
So then we had an Uber come and he picked us up. This guy, he came and but he couldn't we had to meet him at the spot where like it was actually open because he couldn't drive.
But wait, you arrived. Here's what I'm saying. Like you arrived via friend's jet.
Oh yeah. So this Uber took us
or did you buy a plane ticket or what?
No, this Uber, he took us to this private airport in Reno, and then our friend's jet was there.
So the guy had not left yet?
You mean the pilot?
Yeah, but meaning you arrived with somebody.
Yeah, he was with us. That guy who flew up.
Oh, he was with you. Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay, so I thought you had split up somehow.
Oh, no. Yeah, so the same guy who we flew in with, we flew out with. It's his plane. So we were like, we're sticking with you, buddy. And so because everything was getting moved
I
around,
gotcha.
when it's a
I
private
gotcha.
plane, you can do whatever
Okay.
you want. You can say, hey, you're not picking me
Yeah.
up today. You're
Okay.
picking me up tomorrow now.
Yeah.
So
When you
yeah.
got a private plane and someone says you got to pay extra for hangar fees, you're like, whatever.
I know. Yeah. It was actually interesting. We're like, what is the cost to own a plane? We went through all the numbers on the way back and I'm like, whoo, that's expensive.
It's
And
super expensive.
like, yeah, once you get to a certain point, it doesn't matter. And all that to say, like I said, getting out was much bougier than it was last year. And I'm grateful for having people like that who once they get abundance, it's like sharing it. And that's what a lot of people in my friend group, they're very abundant and they're very open to just sharing it with everyone around them, which is really nice. And so I benefited from that this year, which was helpful. And it got
All
me
right.
home with
Would
my
you
kids.
have had the same time, you think, if you did not have access to that? If had you not been picked up, if you had to have trekked the 12 miles?
Yeah, I would say I would have it was a fun adventure to get out. I would have been fine walking the whole way out too. I mean, I was already up for a 12-mile walk. Like it was in my head that that's what we're going to be doing here. And I would just say it was a fun adventure getting out because there was a group of people. If I was by myself, that would have been not as fun. But because we were in a group and I mean, it made the time go by quicker. And I'm also used to hiking and doing longer things like that. But I will say a lot of people stayed back in our camp because were like, they didn't really want to walk. They wanted to just kind of wait it out. And they all equally had just as much fun too. More parties, more dinners, more connection. Some of them just waited till they could drive out, which was, I think, Monday. Actually, most of them waited until you could just drive out. So it was.
Well,
yeah,
I think it brings up a good thought for a lot of people listening, and that is, a lot of the things that you will most remember, probably like some of your greatest joy, probably comes from some sort of struggle. Like we as people, we don't remember like just cush things. I think to my friends that I work with a lot of guys that are in the military. Like they laugh at Hell Week. They laugh at being a plebe. It sucked, of course. Like they didn't enjoy going through it, but at the same time, it's that challenge that brings up, I think, memories. And somehow your brain has a sick way of twisting bad things into like this wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty good.
and the
I
stories
equate it.
that come from it, like so
yeah.
many good stories. You're like,
Yeah,
I
no
will
one
literally.
wants to hear about like the time you sat on your couch and ordered DoorDash. Like no one gives a shit.
Like everyone wants to hear about the time that I fell flat face in the mud because I was trying to carry something and my whole foot got stuck, and then I fell, and like people were around watching, and I had mud on my face.
Trudged out, and like people like hearing stories of overcoming struggle, and those are the things you remember anyways about yourself. I equate it actually to my my wife told me after her first child. Her first child for sure. Is it mine? I still don't know.
TBD, we'll find out one day.
I mean, I witnessed the birthing, so I was like, that's her child for sure. But she said that like shortly after, and she had read about this, that there's like a chemical or hormone or whatever in moms that make them forget about the pain. Like they actually think about having another kid kind of quickly after.
Yeah, and when people ask you, was it terrible? You're like, I mean, I remember it hurt, and would I do it again? Yes.
Screaming in pain, but now here you are. A couple hours later, you're feeling fine. Like, in fact, you're always talking about having more children, and so this idea that when we're not in struggle, it's like some people like want to avoid it. Like they don't want to do anything hard. They don't want to do anything challenging. They don't want to do anything. And I don't know. I don't know if that makes for a memorable life. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that makes it memorable. And I think that's why like people who like CrossFit, who like Spartan, who like hiking, who like mountain climbing, who like just doing hard stuff. And maybe some people say I have a bias because I enjoy some of those things too, but I find them more interesting. I find them to be happier because they do more things. Like people who go on all inclusives, I've always found that they're not interesting.
You never have stories after all inclusives. Yeah. I mean, I think stories are from resiliency of like struggles, or I think pushing your boundaries or like your edges, you can call them, where you're like, I never would have done that before.
Yeah.
And this is outside many people's comfort zone. And like, I can tell you one story. 50% of the people listening will fucking judge me. The other 50% will be like, all right, Steph, you went into a different area. So Jeremy's my partner, we saw on the Burning Man book, there was a couples massage class. And a lot of times you go into these, classes that are happening all throughout the day, and there's great facilitators, like really, like a lot of times you'll stumble on like famous people that you're like, I know it's like $10,000 just to go to your conference. And so all throughout the day, there's all these good talks going on, classes. And so we saw that there was this couples massage class. You have to come as a couple. And it sounds like you're going to learn how to give each other massages and the different techniques. And, they provide oil and massage tables and all this stuff. And I was like, great. I love a good massage. Like, and Jeremy can always get better and learn how to be a better
It's a good skill. You will.
It's a good skill for anyone to have. And I was like, and I guess I could actually learn how to do it too, because I don't ever give Jeremy any. I was like, I guess I can. Yeah, I mainly was like, Jeremy, like, he's really good already, but I'm like, you can always get better, and I can try. So we go there, and it's just this big dome, and you don't even see what's inside of it, and they're just like, just sign up on the list.
My mind's already going to where this is going. I got to stop you right here, because this is getting fascinating. You already know my mind's already going to different places. Listen, we're going to take a pause right here, and we are going to pick up next week. We're going to find out what was in the tent. What was Stephanie doing? I already got my mind's already racing. Is it rated X? We won't find out till next week, so stay tuned. Next week, we'll reveal what happened in the Love Dome.
Just the Love Dome.
The Love Dome. Till next time, everybody.